There are 14 things I've learned after flying the Avata 2 for an entire year that make it even better. And in this video, I'm gonna let you in on all of them. And chances are you don't know at least some of these tips, and some of them could keep you from crashing or losing your Avata. Let's go. First up is shooting at 4K at 60 frames per second instead of 30 frames per second, because that gives you a much smoother 60 frames per second feed into your goggles, which for me at least makes it a lot easier for me to see what's happening at high speeds and control the drone, compared to if I'm only shooting at 30 frames per second. It's a lot harder to see things that are coming at you quickly and all in all maintain orientation. So I always shoot at 4K 60 frames per second, even if I'm gonna be editing and posting the footage in 30 frames per second. I'll just shoot 4K 60 with 1/60th of a second shutter speed for natural motion blur. We'll talk more about that later, but I'll just put the footage on a 30 frames per second timeline. That way I get the best of both worlds, have full frames per second feed to the goggles, and also get my nice motion blur at 30 frames per second. Now, by now, some of you are probably wondering about this drone, why it's all broken. A couple of the ducts are broken. This motor is broken off. All in all, a bit of a sad state of a drone. And the reason is because I crashed it and messed something up with the camera, and I needed to send it back to DJI anyway. And so I've just been flying it full send, pushing my FPV skills to the limits to get better until it won't fly. And now it's time to send it back to DJI, but I wanted to shoot this video first, so that's why I have a half destroyed drone. Next up is another tip for better viewing experience in the goggles. And that is if we use our joystick to click down from the top here, there is something called enhanced display. Now, I don't think you can see on the screen recording what is going on here, because for some reason it doesn't allow you to record it, but this basically brightens up the shadows, increases your dynamic range a little bit, and just gives you all in all a little bit more contrast and better visibility in your shot, so that you can see into darker areas and see what is going on a lot better. I always fly with this turned on because it gives you just that extra boost in visibility that can help you to see a branch or something that is coming up so that you don't run into it. And another thing that's super helpful, if you are shooting in D-Log color profile, you can come into your camera settings and go all the way over past color over to color display assist. And if you turn this on, it will just add some contrast to the video feed in the goggles, so it's not flat log. It won't affect what's recorded to the SD card on the drone, just to the goggles feed. But again, if you're flying in D-Log M, definitely turn this on because it gives you a much better viewing experience and makes it easier to see what's going on. Tip number 3 is to always have an ND filter or UV filter over the camera of your drone. Now, there's a separate reason to use ND filters to get better footage with your drone, but just aside from that, when you crash, if the camera runs into something hard, it can scratch or break the glass. I've actually been surprised how scratch resistant the glass on the Avata 2's camera is, but I crashed it into some steel wires and scratched the glass on this drone, which puts a big smudge in the middle of your footage and kind of ruins it. So that's definitely something that you don't want to happen. So I always like to fly with either an ND filter on the drone, or if I don't want or don't need an ND filter right then, I'll put a little clear glass protective UV filter over the drone so it's still protected from impacts when you crash. Another thing to keep in mind with filters is that they can fall off sometimes when you crash. So when you crash the drone, always make sure to check if the filter is still on the drone or if it's fallen off. And if it's fallen off, you can look around and find it before you have left and don't know where exactly it crashed. Now, I mentioned I would explain the other reason to use ND filters, and that is to get the most cinematic shots, the most natural motion blur with your drone. You want to use a 1/60th of a second shutter speed. And in most conditions, if you set your shutter speed that low, your footage will be way too bright. So you can just clip on a little dark glass filter that cuts down the amount of light that comes into your camera, so you can use a 1/60th of a second shutter speed without blowing out your footage. So yeah, use filters on your Avata. And speaking of getting cinematic shots and camera settings, I put together a checklist of all of my best cinematic settings for the Avata 2 after flying it for a year, and you can download that completely for free. Link to download it is down in the description, so make sure to check that out if you want to get the most cinematic shots with your Avata 2. Next up is how to find your drone if you crash it and can't figure out where it is. And there are a couple different things that you can do. First of all, if you know the general area where the drone is, but you just can't quite pinpoint it, you can turn on ESC beeping. This will just make the motors and electronic speed controllers beep a little bit. To get to this, you can just go into the settings and then go to safety, scroll down all the way to the bottom, and you'll see ESC beeping. You can just turn that on. It'll beep every so many seconds, making a pretty decently loud noise that can be really helpful for finding exactly where your drone is. And then the second thing that can be super helpful if you're not sure exactly where your drone went and you want to get a bit better of an idea of where it landed, right above ESC beeping is camera view before loss. Right now, there's nothing to show because I haven't just crashed my drone, but the goggles will store the last few seconds of footage just before you either crashed the drone or lost connection to it. I think it stores about 30 seconds of footage, and this can be super helpful for figuring out what happened to your drone and narrowing down the area to look for it in. And there's actually one more thing that you can do to help you find where your drone is when you crash it that I actually didn't know about for a long time with the Avata 2, and that is GPS-based Find My Drone. Now, on regular drones with regular remotes, you can just look right on the remote, pull up the map, and see where your drone is. But on the Avata 2, you don't have that functionality anywhere in the goggles, and so I wasn't sure where to find it, but what I've discovered is you can do that right here from your phone. So to get to that, you can just plug your phone into the goggles with a USB cable or lightning cable, and then you'll go to Profile and click on Find My Drone, and it will show you the GPS location of the drone and your phone's current GPS location. Now, as you can see, this is not 100% perfect because I'm sitting right here next to my drone and it's showing that I'm a ways away, but the drone's location is actually accurate and my location is slightly inaccurate. So this can help you to at least get in the same general area as where your drone has crashed, and then you can use ESC beeping and camera view before loss to pinpoint exactly where to look. And you can click on this little layers icon here and switch from a standard map to a satellite map, which is especially helpful if you're out in the middle of nowhere where there isn't really anything on a standard road map, but with a satellite map you can pinpoint that a lot more closely. And you can also click on use other maps and open it in Google Maps, and this will just give you the exact GPS coordinates of your drone, so even if you have to go back and find the drone later, you can know where it is. And with all three of those things, you should be able to find the drone 99% of the time. Moving on to tip number 5, which is not flying with too low of a battery. When you're flying with a lower battery, the drone doesn't have nearly as much power to be able to, let's say, punch out of a dive or to be able to get up and over an obstacle that you see in front of you. Just in general, it becomes a lot less responsive. And if you aren't paying attention to that, you can very easily crash your drone because you don't have enough power. And this has happened to me so many times. I wanted to get one last shot with the drone or give an FPV line one last pass, but the battery was just low enough that I ended up crashing on that last pass. So I've made it kind of a rule for myself that when the battery gets below, let's say around 40%, I'll either bring the drone back in and just quit flying, or keep that in mind and not do any risky maneuvers that might take a lot of punch out power when the battery is partially empty. And just keeping that in mind can actually save you from a lot of crashes. Tip number 6 is sharing the live view feed from the goggles to your phone via either Wi-Fi or a cable. As you can see right now, I have the goggles connected to my phone with a cable, and to see the feed from the drone, you'll just click on Go Fly in the DJI Fly app, and you'll be able to see the view from your goggles right here. Now, you can't interact with anything on the screen, you can only view it, but this is great. You can just give the phone to somebody who's with you when you're flying so that they can see what you're seeing through the goggles, or you can even get some kind of VR goggles that you can put your phone in, like for example the Drone Mask 2 goggles. They're really great, and you can just have a friend put those on and they can watch your flight in first person view while you're flying, which is super cool. Now, you can also do this wirelessly. If we unplug this from the drone and go back to our main screen, and then come here in our goggles and go over to share live view to mobile device via Wi-Fi. Click on that, click OK, and then on our phone, we'll just click on Wi-Fi devices in the Fly app, click on DJI goggles, live view sharing, wait for it to connect, click join to join the Wi-Fi network, and you will have the live feed from the drone wirelessly shared to your phone. Now, both of those methods work fine, but I actually personally prefer to just connect it with a cable because I find that a lot more stable and it's less likely to have extra lag or jitter from the wireless connection. And you can just get a nice long, let's say 6-foot cable, and you shouldn't really have any issues. And our next tip, tip number 7, is goggles defog. Sometimes when you're flying, especially in the summer, you'll start to get fog on your goggles, maybe just from moisture from sweat or whatever, and your goggles will start to fog up and you won't be able to see. So to fix that, you can just come down here to settings, go to display, and turn on goggles defog. And this will turn on some little fans in the goggles that blow a little bit of air through the area where the lenses are and just get rid of that fog on your eye lenses. And that can be the difference between being able to safely fly and not really being able to fly well. And tip number 8 is return to home settings. If we go again into our settings menu, go to safety, scroll all the way down to advanced safety settings, we have aircraft signal loss action. Now we have 3 things here: return to home, land, and hover. 99.9% of the time you'll want to have this on return to home, so if you lose connection with your drone, it will just fly back to the home point. But, and this is very important, if you're flying under trees or something like that and you lose connection to the drone, then it will go straight up and run into the trees and crash, which is not good. So in those situations, and only in those situations, you want to change aircraft signal lost action from return to home to hover. I would basically never set this to land because that will make the drone just land straight down into whatever is under it, and that is not a particularly good thing to happen a lot of the time. But just make sure to change this back to return to home most of the time so that your drone isn't stuck far away from you if you lose signal. Our next tip number 9, is to use the FPV Remote Controller 3. The little wand remote, the motion controller 3 that comes with the Avata 2 is okay. I know some people really like it. I personally don't like it because I was so used to flying regular camera drones with sticks that somehow just the interface of just tilting your hand to turn the drone just didn't sit well with me. But just objectively, you are limited in what you can do with that motion controller. You can't dive the drone straight down. You can't do a lot of the really cool moves that you see in all the FPV videos online. For that, you're going to have to fly in manual mode with the FPV Remote Controller 3. Basically, 100% of the FPV footage I've shot is in manual mode with this remote, and it is the way to go if you want to shoot cinematic FPV. Now, it is a lot harder to learn than using the motion controller. Flying in manual FPV isn't quite the same as flying with a regular remote. You're probably going to have to practice some in the simulator before you start to fly in manual mode with the actual remote. But if you want to have maximum fun with your FPV drone and get the coolest shots, it is 100% worth it. And going off of manual mode and the FPV Remote Controller 3, to be able to fly in full manual mode, you actually have to enable it in the menus in the goggles. And to do that, you just come in here into the settings menu, come down to control, go to remote controller, and first of all, you'll need to set the custom mode from sport mode over to manual mode, and you'll have to hit confirm here. This is basically the 3rd position on this mode switch here: normal mode, sport mode, and manual mode. By default, it's just set to sport mode so people don't accidentally flip it into manual mode and crash. But if you want to fly in manual mode, you'll also need to peel off the rubber here on the back of the remote and adjust the spring tension with a little hex screw for the left stick of the drone so that it doesn't automatically recenter, because for FPV you don't want that. You want it to just stay wherever you leave it. And even after you do those 2 things, you still won't have full manual mode unlocked. You will be flying in manual mode, but you actually still have some limitations. So to fix that, we'll come over here from button customization over to gain and expo, and there's a setting down at the bottom called M mode attitude limit. And if this is turned on, it basically prevents you from flipping your drone all the way over or even diving it all the way straight down. It's basically like training wheels on your drone so that you can't flip it any direction you want, which actually can be good for your first couple of manual flights so that you can get some idea of how the drone flies without being able to actually flip it over. But if you want to be able to get the full manual flying experience and be able to dive cliffs and do flips and all that kind of cool stuff, you'll actually need to turn this off. When you flip that off, you'll have to confirm it, but then you'll be able to take full advantage of manual mode controls. And next up, tip number 11 is turtle mode. Sometimes when you crash, the drone will end up upside down, and you might not want to have to walk over and pick it up. So what you can do is just come here into the settings, come down to control, and click on turtle mode. I won't do it right here, but it will basically spin the motors on the one side of the drone one direction and the motors on the other side of the drone the other direction to flip the drone over so that it's upright, and then you can just take off and fly again as long as there's nothing stuck in the motors in the props. Sometimes something will be stuck there, and so you won't be able to take off and you'll have to actually go and manually pick up the drone. But it is a great option that DJI has included so that you can just flip the drone back over and keep flying. And tip number 12 is to stabilize your footage in post in GyroFlow instead of using the built-in image stabilization. Now, the built-in stabilization is actually quite good. If you're just flying around for fun, it is fully sufficient. You'll get pretty nice stable footage after the fact to watch on your computer. But if you want the absolute best results, the most buttery smooth footage, it's best to turn the stabilization off in the drone, and that will embed gyroscope data into the file, which you can then bring into a completely free program called GyroFlow, which will stabilize it. And because it can look further forward and further backward in the motion data, it can do a better job predicting the moves that you're going to make and making your footage super smooth and cinematic. Now, you just want to make sure that if you turn off Rocksteady on the drone and are planning to use GyroFlow, that you have the camera field of view set to wide, not normal or ultra wide. If you have it set to ultra wide or normal, it won't record gyro data into the files. For some reason, it actually says that in the goggles, but I didn't catch it when I was first flying the Avata 2 and shot some great footage with stabilization turned off in ultra wide mode, and there was no gyro data, so I simply couldn't stabilize it. And so because of that, I basically lost that footage. So just a little bit of a cautionary tale there, but GyroFlow is definitely the way to go for the most smooth cinematic FPV footage out of the Avata 2. And tip number 12 is putting little stick extensions on your FPV remote. Now, I currently actually don't fly with these, but I did for quite a while when I was still getting better at flying FPV. These are basically little extensions that go on these sticks that make them longer. And so because the sticks are longer, the distance that you move your finger tilts the drone less. And so you can actually have a lot finer control over your drone. And that's especially helpful on the throttle stick, because let's say you want to skim right above the ground, you need to be able to very, very finely control your throttle close to the bottom to be able to just skim nice and low above the ground and not be bobbing up and down. Now, after a while, I've gotten to where I have fine enough control that I can do it no problem just with the default sticks on the FPV remote, but it was super, super helpful for me when I was learning. And you can get some of these on Amazon. Oh, I accidentally triggered turtle mode in the goggles here, and it started to try to flip the drone over, but because one of the motors is broken off and does not have a prop on it, that was not working, especially because it was already upright, and I couldn't figure out how to shut it off, so I had to just pull the battery out. Well, that was an interesting little diversion. So as I was saying before that all went crazy, you can get some of these stick extensions on Amazon that will actually screw in place of your original sticks, and I'll put a link to those down in the description. But what I actually did is I simply 3D printed some little stick extensions that just slip over these sticks and make them longer. So that's an option as well if you have a 3D printer. If I can find it, I'll link the 3D print file for it down in the description as well. And finally, tip number 14 is adding lights to your drone to be able to fly at night. And I was kind of debating including this one, but it's pretty cool, so I thought I had to share it. This company, either VFly or ViFly, I'm not sure exactly how you pronounce it, sent me these little lights that you can just stick on top of your drone to illuminate in front of it so you can see with the FPV camera. And then there's a couple that clip onto the bottom of the drone to illuminate the ground under the drone so that the vision sensors can do their job. And I was kind of skeptical of how well this was actually going to work, but I tried it out and it's actually a ton of fun to be able to fly your Avata 2 at night. These lights are super bright, as you can see. Even here in the studio with a lot of lights, they are shining quite a bright light, and at night they let you basically be able to fly in the pitch black where you wouldn't be able to fly otherwise. They illuminate far enough ahead of the drone that you can see to fly even in manual mode. You can also fly it in sport mode because of the downward lights for the vision positioning system. All in all, I've got to say I'm really impressed. It's a lot better than I thought it was going to be, so I'll link these down in the description as well. Definitely not something that's essential for your Avata, but it is a really cool add-on if you want to fly at night. So there you have my top 14 Avata 2 tips after flying it for an entire year. You can click right here to see my best cinematic settings for the Avata 2, or you can click right here to watch my first 2 weeks of learning to fly in manual mode, again with the Avata 2. And if you want to get the best cinematic shots with your drone, make sure to check out my completely free 45-minute drone filmmaking training where I share my top 10 secrets to getting cinematic shots. As always, if you've enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe for more videos like it, and we'll see you in the next one.